Joe Calzaghe fight myself. It didn't get much coverage. It was only sort of bought by a television network, I think, a week prior to the fight, and it was my big chance. This was the fight for the unified cruiserweight championship of the world. I'd failed 2 or 3 years earlier against Carl Thompson. Everybody wrote me off and said, I didn't have what it takes to get to the very top. But I went behind closed doors. I sort of moved to North Cyprus for a couple of years to really get my head down, no distractions. And when the opportunity came to go over to Levallois on the outskirts of Paris to fight this guy who I think he'd only lost one fight in 10 years, and he actually got revenge on that fight. So he was the number one in the division, the Ring Magazine champion, WBC, WBA. He won the IBF. He had that stripped right before he fought me. So he was the man to beat. And he had a style that I'd always struggled with. He was very short, very compact, didn't give you much room to punch. So I had to kind of adapt my style for his style. And it worked a treat. He knocked me down in the 4th round, but strangely, I actually prepared. I knew there was a strong chance he could knock me down. So I used to do roly-polies in the gym to get really dizzy and then do my pad work with Adam Booth, and it worked. I remember getting knocked down and thinking, okay, practice this. I knew this was a chance. So I know I've lost around 10-8. Just kill the clock to the end of the round, regroup and come back in round 5. And that's exactly what I did. I came back in round 5, and the plan was from round 7 onwards to round 12, just to start picking the pace up, not to have too much of a punch out at early doors, but save it to the second half of the fight. And strangely, in round 7, when I did pick it up, I managed to knock him out. And for me, that was one of the biggest highlights of my career.
You spoke about the roly-polies.
Yeah.
You literally used to fall onto the canvas and spin around.
Tell
us more about that.
Yeah, it was a way, in the past I've been hit with shots, I've been hurt with shots. I think in my 7th fight, I fought a guy called Lenga Mock. I got hit on the chin, and all I remember was just my head spinning. It was like, when you do the party trick where you got a broom going round and round it onto your head and you fall over. It felt like that in the ring, so I thought I need to replicate this feeling. So when it happens again, it's not alien to me. So I did it in the roly-poly, spinning around, and then I had to hold my faculties together as I wanted to fall over. As you see any big fighter gets hit on the chin. I remember Mike Tyson fought Trevor Berbick. You get up too fast, you fall back down. It's just like your head spinning. So I needed to regroup, one knee on the floor, count when it gets around. When the count gets to 7, 8, stand up, and then keep going. And I practiced it, and it worked. It really worked. I'm really fortunate that I implemented that in my training program. So come fight night, when the worst happened, when you get nailed by the champion on foreign territory, it was a Don King promotion. So I knew if it went the distance, the chances of me winning in Paris, being an Englishman, were pretty much zero. And I think I was down on the cards as well when I knocked him out. So everything sort of came together. All the lessons I learned early in my career, proved worthwhile, and I was then the number one in the division, the only ever unified cruiserweight champion from Britain.
You gave us a glimpse into who Jean-Marc Mormec was just a moment or so ago, but this was a man who'd only been beaten once in the previous 10 years by O'Neill Bell, and had avenged that defeat. So in effect, he'd beaten everyone he'd faced in the last 10 years. So when you assess that kind of opponent, what's the ratio of fear to excitement, and does it change from day to day, from hour to hour?
I always just knew he had the worst style for my style. Anytime I'd struggled in fights or struggled in sparring, it was people who had his style. And I fought a guy called Jacob Fragameni for the final eliminator for the WBC title it was, and at York Hall, Bethnal Green, and I had a real tough night. He was like a weaker version of Mormec. He was a little bit shorter, he was a little bit lighter, he wasn't as big, he wasn't as tough, and he really pushed me hard. He cut my eye. It was another one of those crazy fights where I had to really go soul searching. I managed to pull the victory back, I think, in round 9, but I then knew moving forward I was going to have to fight a guy who had a very similar style, but was bigger, stronger, more consistent, had fought better fighters, was a world champion. And that was the only way I was going to get the respect from the world's boxing fans and media. So I thought, I need to do this. So I literally moved out of London, and because I knew I couldn't live the life I was living and expect to get the very best out of myself. And it really worked out. So me and Adam Booth moved to North Cyprus for literally a couple of years, because we knew, the challenge that I had ahead of me, what was too vast for me to kind of live the life I was living in London with my friends and family around and going out, and I just had to really kind of separate myself from it. And we built a gym in the middle of nowhere, and we just worked every day, and it really paid dividends.
You spoke there about Adam Booth. I seem to remember in commentary on Five Live, we went across to the corner at one stage and he was mentioning the number of punches, as if that had been part of the plan.
It was, I really wanted to keep a low punch out, but people didn't quite understand what we were talking about. Like, for me to be competitive in a round, but only throw 20 punches, it shows that I was controlling the range, controlling the distance, controlling the movement. Whereas if I was competitive in a round and threw 100 punches, I knew I was only controlling it with my punches. And in fights, you need to maintain, you need to hold in reserve the big punches for the second half of the fight. So the plan was to throw as few punches in the early rounds, allowing Mormek to use his punches. So come the halfway point, you then step it up to 50, 60 punches a round, and it messes his game plan up, messes his rhythm up, his timing, and I can then pull away. And soon as I then increased the punch output, I knocked him out in the seventh round. So it was something I've been working on in sparring, and I still do it now. I only punch when I need to punch, when I have to punch. It's something I've kind of reintroduced into my style of late. But it was something that, watching his fights, he was a leech. He used to, because he didn't move his head that much, because he allowed you to hit him, because he was so tough, people got drunk on their success. So people could land 100 punches in the first round, 100 punches in the second round, 150 punches in the third round, but they didn't realise it's a 12-round fight. And he is only throwing 5 or 6 punches in those rounds. So you might win the first 3 rounds, but come round 4, 5, and 6, he starts taking over. He goes to 20 punches. You can't maintain the 100 punches, and he takes over. So we studied his punch output, studied my punch output, and we kind of topsy-turvied it on him and sort of used his style against him. And because I wasn't throwing so many punches, it allowed him to throw more punches, which is something he didn't ordinarily do. So he managed to sort of do the old switcheroo on him, and it worked out perfect.
But see, all of this seems to be underpinned by experience, David, because you've mentioned only 2 other opponents here. Thompson, who beat you, and Fragamani, who could have beaten you. So all of that was used as the platform for learning and putting into practice exactly what you've just said. Yeah,
it's hard sometimes to learn. If I walk out there and knock somebody out in one round with one shot, what do you learn about that other than you punch hard? And I know I punch hard. I always punch hard since I was a kid. You learn the best lessons I found in life through adversity, when things aren't going your way, or when you've got to change the game plan. So a lot of the fights that I've learned the most in are the fights that I've either lost or really struggled with. The fights where I've won easy, I didn't. It's just a pat on the back for me, really. So I believe I've learned a lot over the years. I've had so many different situations, against southpaws, big guys, short guys, heavy guys. I've been in the ring either in fights or in sparring with so many different types of styles and different sort of personalities. I really believe it. At 37 years old now, as you said, 10 years since, 10 years next month since the Mormek fight. I've got so much of a wealth of knowledge that when it comes time for getting back in the ring now, I feel so much more confident that I can find a way to win.
Back then, you were working with Frank Maloney as a promoter. I remember in the hotel on the evening of the fight, you were there at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I came in, I don't know where I'd been, but I saw Frank Maloney in the lobby, and he said to me, and he whispered because you were nearby, almost in earshot, he said, I wish he'd go back to his room and relax.
Yeah.
But everybody has their own way of dealing with those last almost aching hours until the first bell rings.
Yeah, I've always been quite out and about. I always like it. I like to talk to people. I like to see how they're feeling. I understand boxing is entertainment, and I've always liked to, before a fight, see how's everyone feeling. Are you excited? What are you excited about? I don't know why that is, but I like to be around people. Obviously the last couple of hours prior to the fight, I sort of lock myself away and get in the zone. But prior to a fight, I like to just talk to people and see how they're feeling and ask them how excited they are. What do they want to see? What do they expect to happen? And I just like talking about the fight because I enjoy boxing. I'm still a boxing fan. And even fights I'm going into, like now, my big fight against Tony Bellew, I love talking to people about it. Say, did you like the first fight? What did you like about the first fight? What do you think's going to happen in the second fight? I love talking about it to people because I know come fight night, everyone's interest is going to be there. You know, millions of people around the world are going to be tuning in, and everyone's got an opinion about this this big rematch I'm having with Bellew. And I love to be in fights that people care about. I've had the fights where no one's ever heard of the opponent, and it's not why I'm in the boxing. So it's hard to have an opinion about someone you've never heard of. You know, it could be Carlos Takam, it could be even Pulev. Nobody really knew who Pulev. I can barely remember what his first name is, and I'm in the heavyweight division. So, but if Joshua was to fight a David Haye or a